8. Racist rampage. In November 2022, a University of Kentucky student named Sophia Rosing was accused of launching a racist attack against a black woman who was working the front desk at her dorm building. The 22-year-old allegedly stumbled into the building drunk and hurled derogatory insults at two people, including the front desk employee Kyla Spring, who was also a student at the college. Footage of the incident appeared to show Rosing charging at Spring with a shopping cart, throwing several punches at the victim, and repeatedly hurling racial insults at Spring. Rosing was charged with public intoxication, assault, disorderly conduct, and assault on an officer. She was formally indicted on the charges in early 2023. Following her arrest, Rosing withdrew from the University of Kentucky and was banned from returning to the campus. She pleaded not guilty to the charges she faces and has yet to publicly apologize for her behavior. In a statement, the young woman's attorney said that his client was undergoing treatment and that she'll apologize, quote, when the time is right. Rosing's court case is ongoing. 7. The murder of Samuel Knopp. In February 2024, 24-year-old University of Colorado student Samuel Knopp and a visitor, 26-year-old Saley Rain Montgomery, were fatally shot in Knopp's dorm room in Colorado Springs. Suspicion quickly fell on Knopp's roommate, 25-year-old Nicholas Jordan, who is now facing 2 second-degree murder charges. Court documents revealed that there was an ongoing dispute between Jordan and 2 of his roommates, including Knopp, due to his living conditions and marijuana smoking. Just weeks before the shooting, Jordan allegedly threatened to kill Knopp if he was asked to take out the garbage again. The dispute was reported to campus police and housing officials several times, but there's no evidence of any action being taken to resolve the situation. Around 14 hours before the crime, Jordan had filed to withdraw from the university. Inside his car, police reportedly found a fully loaded AK-47. Jordan was found incompetent to stand trial following a psychiatric evaluation. He's been ordered to undergo another evaluation at the prosecutor's request, which essentially means that the case remains delayed indefinitely. 6. The murder of Christian Aguilar. 18-year-old Christian Aguilar vanished without a trace in September of 2012 during his freshman year at the University of Florida in Gainesville. He was reported missing by his girlfriend, Erica Freeman, and his best friend, Pedro Bravo. Bravo was the last known person to see Aguilar. He told investigators that Christian had picked up a hitchhiker the previous evening during their drive home from Best Buy. He described the stranger as a gray-haired man in his 50s or 60s. After dropping off the hitchhiker, Bravo claimed that he and Aguilar argued over how Aguilar was handling some problems in his personal life. Aguilar asked to be let out of the car, and that was the last time Bravo said he saw his friend. Investigators soon discovered that Bravo had previously dated Erica Freeman, and that Freeman had broken up with Bravo shortly before she started dating Aguilar. There were lingering tensions between the young men over their shared romantic interest, leading to speculation that it may have been a motive for Bravo to harm his friend. Roughly 3 weeks after Aguilar vanished, his decomposing remains were found in a wooded area. Further investigation revealed that Bravo had drugged his Gatorade with sedatives and most likely strangled him to death. Bravo was arrested for murder. By the time his trial rolled around, the prosecution had amassed a growing pile of evidence, strongly pointing toward his guilt, including testimony from a jailhouse informant that Bravo had confided in about the crime. Bravo was found guilty of 7 charges, including first-degree murder, which carries an automatic life sentence without parole in Florida. He was also convicted of kidnapping, false imprisonment, poisoning, improper transportation of human remains, giving false information to law enforcement in a missing person case, tampering with evidence, and providing false reports. Bravo maintained his innocence during a jailhouse interview with ABC's 2020 in early 2024. His multiple appeals have been denied, and his life sentence remains in place. 5. The disappearance of Tu Thi Kam Chan. While attending classes at the University of Maryland's Baltimore County campus in 1990, 24-year-old Tu Thi Kam Chan continued to live at home with her family about a half-hour's drive south in Lanham. After finishing an evening class in November of that year, she hung out with a friend in the university's center game room for a little while, then left to drive home at around 8:30 p.m. But she never made it to her car, and her whereabouts remain a mystery to this day. Tu's older brother reported her missing to campus police when she failed to return home. Authorities launched a ground and air search of the 500-acre, 202 hectares campus, including with help from police canines, but failed to turn up any sign of the young woman. The investigation was handled by campus police, who remained tight-lipped about the progress of the case. They insisted that there was no evidence to suggest that Tu had met with foul play, and reassured the public that they were working hard on the case, despite their unwillingness to share many details. Tu's disappearance generated controversy on campus, where students voiced their outrage at the police for their alleged lack of progress and transparency. But the case eventually fell into obscurity and remains unsolved. 4. The murder of Eric Plunkett. Located in Washington, D.C., Gallaudet University is one of the world's top colleges for the deaf and hard of hearing. In addition to offering a quality learning experience, it provides its students with a sense of community and has an impressive safety record. That's why people were shocked when, just weeks into the fall semester in 2000, 18-year-old freshman Eric Plunkett was found bludgeoned to death in his dorm room. Plunkett had been choked and then beaten with a chair, with nobody around who was capable of hearing him scream. The murder was discovered by Plunkett's close friend, Joseph Mesa Jr., who lived across the hall. Investigators questioned Mesa, but they were more suspicious of another young man, Thomas Minch, who Plunkett had a romantic interest in. Minch had rejected Plunkett's advances, but denied any involvement in the crime. He remained a person of interest even after proving that he was at a theater rehearsal at the time of Plunkett's murder. Law enforcement had no choice but to let Minch go due to a lack of evidence. In the meantime, he was banned from Gallaudet's campus. His claims of innocence weren't believed until 4 months later, when another student, 19-year-old Benjamin Varner, was found stabbed to death in his dorm room. Minch was easily able to prove that he was at home in New Hampshire at the time of Varner's murder, forcing investigators to finally turn their attention toward other suspects. Both Plunkett and Varner had been robbed, and the trail of financial activity following Varner's murder led police to Joseph Mesa Jr., the good friend who had discovered Plunkett's body. Mesa confessed to both murders during questioning, citing his desire for money as the main motivating factor. He told a different story at trial, claiming he had seen visions of the professional wrestler, The Undertaker, encouraging him to commit the crimes. Psychiatric experts testified that Mesa suffered from depression and antisocial behavior stemming from his childhood in Guam, where he struggled to communicate his feelings and thoughts to his family due to his deafness. But the jury was unswayed by these claims, and Mesa was found guilty as charged. He's currently serving 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. 3. The murder of Butch Pratt. In October 1989, an informant gave police in Greenville, Pennsylvania, the location of a murdered victim's shallow grave. The body belonged to Roger Butch Pratt, who had vanished from the area shortly after his graduation from Thiel College the year before. He was handcuffed, his ankles were bound with a necktie, and he had been brutally beaten to death. During his 4 years at Thiel, Pratt had roomed with his best friend and fraternity brother, Edward "Ed" Swiger. Now, Swiger was the prime suspect in Pratt's murder. The informant who gave police the location of Pratt's grave happened to be Swiger's ex-girlfriend, Linda Carlin, who admitted to being present when Ed and his brother Michael buried Pratt's body. Shortly after Pratt and Swiger graduated in 1988, Ed had called his brother Michael in a panic. He told Michael that he and Butch had stolen some stereo equipment from their fraternity brothers, and Butch had gotten caught. And while Butch had not implicated Ed in the crime, the two had recently had a falling out. This was causing Ed to worry that Butch would spill the beans about this and other shady activities, including an arson he had committed for insurance money. A burglary conviction would ruin Ed's dream of going to law school, and he was unwilling to even risk having that happen. At Ed's urging, Michael agreed to help his brother convince Pratt to keep his mouth shut. From Michael's understanding, the plan was to bribe Pratt. In the meantime, Ed convinced two friends, Teresa Wakulchik and Caroline Luley, to persuade Pratt to take a bus to Akron, Ohio for a party. The women picked Pratt up at the bus stop and drove him to a remote location where Ed and Michael were waiting. Following the discovery of Pratt's body, news reports claimed that both Ed and Michael beat Pratt to death. Michael denied playing an active role in the actual killing, putting the blame entirely on Ed, but he admitted to helping Ed transport and bury Pratt's body. On their way to the burial site, the men picked up Linda Carlin, who was accused of helping to mastermind the murder. During his trial in 1990, Ed claimed that Pratt's death was a tragic accident, that he didn't mean to go that far. He insisted that Pratt was like a brother to him, but the jury didn't buy it. Swiger was convicted of murder and sentenced to 30 years to life in the Ohio State prison system. He'll become eligible for parole in 2029. Michael Swiger was also convicted of killing Pratt, along with arson. He was sentenced to 21 to 53 years in prison and was paroled in the early 2000s. Linda Carlin was convicted of conspiracy to kidnap Pratt and was sentenced to 7 to 15 years in prison. Teresa Wakulchik and Caroline Luley pleaded guilty to the same charge and were sentenced to probation. 2. The suspicious death of Akal B. Dawan. After visiting his family over the winter break, 18-year-old University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign student Akal B. Dawan returned to campus in January 2024 to start the spring semester. Less than a week later, a friend reported him missing to campus police at around 1:30 in the morning. Nearly 10 hours later, at around 11 a.m., a university employee found Dawan's body on the concrete back steps of a building less than half a block away from his last known location. In a statement regarding the preliminary findings of Dawan's autopsy, the Champaign County coroner said that the teen's body showed signs of hypothermia and that there was no evidence of significant trauma. Dawan's parents were left with lingering questions, including why it took 10 hours for someone to find the young man just a few hundred feet from where he vanished. They also wondered why a university employee found their son's body, leading them to suspect that the police never even searched for Dawan. According to a timeline of events released by the police at the conclusion of their investigation, Dawan had repeatedly tried entering a club despite being turned away by staff. At least 2 rideshare cars were called for him, but he allegedly turned down both rides, despite the attempts of his friends and the club's employees to persuade him to get in the cars. Dawan stopped responding to text messages and phone calls shortly thereafter, prompting one of his friends to report him missing. A police officer reportedly drove through the area he vanished in at a walking pace, but did not search on foot, leaving Dawan's parents understandably upset about how the case was handled. They have announced their plans to sue the university for negligence, but as far as campus police are concerned, Dawan's death is a closed case. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. The murder of Kamei Mitchell Da Silva. In April 2024, 18-year-old first-year college student Kamei Mitchell Da Silva visited a friend at Delaware State University in Dover. At the time, she was attending classes at a different university, but she was considering transferring to Delaware State in the fall to pursue a cybersecurity degree, and she wanted to check out the school's campus. Da Silva's visit was tragically cut short during the pre-dawn hours when she was struck in the head by a stray bullet outside a dormitory building. Campus police officers responded to the sound of gunfire at 1:40 in the morning and found the young woman clinging to life on the pavement. She was rushed to the hospital where she died from her injuries. Following the tragedy, the Dover Police Department released a statement clarifying that they did not believe De Silva was the intended target of the gunfire. Several weeks after the shooting, authorities announced the arrests of 20-year-old Destry Jones and 18-year-old Damian Hinson. Both suspects are Dover residents, but Hinson was captured in Brooklyn, New York. They're each facing charges of murder in connection with De Silva's death and the attempted murder of 2 other individuals. For now, details on what led up to the shooting remain scarce, as the defendants remain in custody while awaiting the next steps in their cases.
8. Sidney Gilstrap Portley. Sidney Gilstrap Portley spent his entire childhood dreaming about becoming an NBA star, but he had a difficult upbringing and several real-world struggles got in the way. He played on a junior varsity team at his high school in Texas for a short time, but was kicked off for being too difficult to coach. The reputation followed him around, making it impossible for him to get on a college team. Desperate to turn his pro sports ambitions into a reality, he showed up at a high school in East Dallas one morning at the age of 25. He then enrolled as a student, pretending to be much younger than he actually was. Going by the name Rashawn Richardson, he told the front desk he was a Hurricane Harvey refugee and had lost everything in the storm, including his ID. He attended the school for 2 months in anticipation of basketball season, but ended up transferring to another school with a better team. Sidney, disguised as Rashawn, played exceptionally well, even bringing the school to a historic victory against one of the country's best high school basketball teams. His skills attracted curious sports reporters who wanted to know about his background. It wasn't long before his story fell apart. People realized that Rashawn's so-called nephew called him Dad, and his teammates noticed that he wasn't up to date on the age group's latest trends. Police arrested him in the middle of the night for tampering with government records. He soon caught more charges for things he allegedly did while dating one of the school's students. His fall from grace was swift, and in 2019, Sidney was sentenced to 6 years of probation for an indecency charge. 7. Kendrick Johnson. In 2013, the body of a young African-American man named Kendrick Johnson was found upside down in a rolled-up gymnasium mat at his high school in Valdosta, Georgia. The community was shocked and suspected foul play at the hands of 2 white students. An autopsy ruled the cause of death as positional asphyxia, indicating that Kendrick had suffocated after becoming trapped upside down in the mat. Local authorities deemed the young man's death an unfortunate accident and closed the case without making any arrests. The US Justice Department declined to pursue a case because they felt they lacked enough evidence to prove that Kendrick was murdered and that it was racially motivated, which are the required criteria for charging anyone with a federal crime. Once again, the case was closed and the government offered its condolences to the family. Kendrick's father, Kenneth Johnson, told the New York Times that a forensic pathologist hired by the family concluded that his son died from blunt force trauma. A third autopsy initially ruled Kendrick's death accidental and caused by asphyxiation, but the cause of death was later changed to undetermined. After taking over as Lowndes County Sheriff in 2016, Ashley Pork reopened the case. He reviewed the evidence and documents himself and agreed with the previous determination that Kendrick's death was a bizarre accident. Pork interpreted the federal documents surrounding the case as reflective of a witch hunt by agents who were determined to charge the 2 white suspects, even though that never happened. Former US Attorney Michael J. Moore denied that the department was under pressure to produce results, as Pork implied. For now, the case remains at a standstill. Authorities have made their official rulings, and Kendrick's loved ones remain convinced that someone murdered him. In the meantime, Pork announced plans to make almost all the evidence in the case publicly available. He encouraged people to examine it on their own and to draw their own conclusions about what happened. 6. Larry Swartz. Maryland couple Robert and Kay Swartz couldn't have biological children, so they adopted 3 kids, including 2 boys from foster pair named Michael and Larry, who were the same age. Larry was mostly well-behaved, but Michael had severe emotional and disciplinary issues, which ultimately proved to be too much for his devout Catholic parents to handle. After struggling with Michael for 5 years, Robert and Kay relinquished custody of him to the state, and he was institutionalized at a mental hospital. One morning in 1984, the couple was found brutally stabbed and bludgeoned to death. Larry, who was 17 at the time, made the 911 call. For a long time, police theorized that Michael had snuck out of the mental hospital and murdered his former adoptive parents as revenge for giving up on him. But investigators visited the hospital and realized that it would have been impossible for Michael to slip away and return unnoticed. Shockingly, a bloody handprint at the scene came back as a match to Larry, who until then was never a suspect in the case. As it turned out, Larry had trouble coping with his parents' super strict rules, but unlike his brother, he internalized his frustrations. He finally snapped one day when Robert and Kay got on his case about his grades and killed them in a frenzied rage. While there's no excuse for murder, Larry's attorneys argued that the young man's parents were abusive and that it was a mitigating factor in his case. His age also worked in his favor, and he received a shockingly lenient sentence of just 12 years, part of which was spent at a mental institution. Larry was paroled in 1993, but he died from a heart attack in 1998 at just 38 years old. 5. Brianne Otis. 35-year-old Brianne Otis was working at a high school in Kaysville, Utah in 2013 when she was accused of having inappropriate relationships with 3 of her students. The married English teacher's illicit affairs apparently went on for months. Otis was arrested on a slew of felonies and was fired from her job after 2 of her alleged victims told investigators about their relationships with her. She was initially freed on bond, but was carted back to jail for continuing to see one of the victims after her arrest. As part of a plea deal, she pleaded guilty to 3 charges of abuse and was sentenced to serve between 2 and 30 years in prison. The agreement enabled her to avoid the most serious convictions, as well as the life sentence that could have come with them. In one of these several civil lawsuits regarding the case, one of the victims' families partially blamed the school. They claimed that they'd complained to the facility's administrators about Otis's questionable behavior in the past and that nothing was done. But in the end, the school denied any culpability and the lawsuits were tossed. Otis, who's now divorced, was paroled in 2019 after serving 4 years in prison. At her parole hearing, she said that she had found self-compassion and self-love despite the challenges of life behind bars. She also admitted to her wrongdoings and said she lost hold of her values as she fell into a cycle of justifying her behavior. Since her release, she's kept a low profile and seems to be staying out of trouble. 4. Artur Samarin. In late 2015, police in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, received a tip that a star student at a local high school was a 23-year-old illegal immigrant who was dating his much younger classmates. To his teachers and fellow students, he was an 18-year-old senior named Asher Potts. He earned straight A's, he was in Navy ROTC, and he even scored a college scholarship to study aeronautics. Potts was somewhat of a local celebrity who achieved recognition for donating blood and volunteering at a local food bank. He'd been a student at the school for over 3 years by the time he fell under legal scrutiny for allegedly enrolling with fake documents. His real name, detectives discovered, was Artur Samarin. He came to the US in 2013 on a visitor visa and overstayed past its expiration. A couple he was staying with, Michael and Stephane Potts, posed as his adoptive parents when he signed up to go to school. Following an investigation, authorities charged Samarin with identity theft, tampering with official records, corruption of minors, and sexual assault, account related to his alleged relationship with a student. Shortly after his arrest, he admitted in an interview with local station WHTM that he broke the law and is therefore technically a criminal. He would later admit that he felt bitter toward the system he cheated in his attempt at achieving a better life. Samarin served a short prison sentence and was deported back to Ukraine. Michael Potts was sentenced to 2 years of probation, while Stephane Potts served 5 months in federal prison for knowingly housing an illegal immigrant. 3. The murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart. While house-sitting for relatives in Idaho in 2006, high school student Cassie Jo Stoddart had her boyfriend, Matt Beckham, keep her company. 2 other classmates, Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk, also stopped by, but they left during a movie the teens were watching together, saying they wanted to go to the local cinema instead. But instead, without Cassie's knowledge, the pair unlocked a basement door so they could get back into the house without being noticed from outside. They re-entered wearing creepy masks and tried luring Cassie and Matt downstairs by cutting the power on the circuit breaker. When it failed to draw the couple into the basement, Draper and the damn chick turned the power back on. After noticing that Cassie was scared by the outage and the strange noises coming from downstairs, Matt offered to take her to his house for the night. But she didn't want to break her house-sitting commitment, so Matt left. And that's when Draper and Adamczyk cut the power again. When they failed to lure Cassie to the basement, they came upstairs and stabbed her to death with a hunting knife and a dagger. Investigators found a video of the suspects discussing their obsession with horror movies and their plan to kill Cassie. Evidence proved that Adamczyk and Draper had planned the murder for weeks, with the goal of having it resemble the movie Scream. Naturally, the young men tried to blame each other during their trial, but the court concluded that they both masterminded the scheme and were equally responsible for Cassie's death. They were both sentenced to life with the possibility of parole and have spent years appealing their sentences. So far, the courts have upheld the original ruling. 2. Philip Chisholm. During what started out as a normal day at a Massachusetts high school in 2014, 24-year-old math teacher Colleen Ritzer asked new student Philip Chisholm to stay behind and speak with her after class so they could study for an upcoming test. During the conversation, another student overheard Ritzer mentioning Tennessee, where the young man was from, which seemed to drastically change Chisholm's demeanor. Something triggered the troubled student, who relocated to Massachusetts following his parents' divorce. His mother would later claim that all the new changes in his life had stressed him out. Chisholm followed Ritzer into a bathroom and brutally assaulted her. He stabbed her in the throat with a pencil, then put her body into a garbage can and disposed of it in the woods behind the school. When police apprehended him alongside a highway the next day, his hands were still covered in Ritzer's blood. During questioning, Chisholm said that Ritzer set him off by using a trigger word, but he refused to go into further detail. He told officers, "After she insulted me, that's when I became the teacher." Authorities charged him with murder and assault, and he was tried as an adult due to the severity of the crime. Chisholm was convicted of both counts. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison for the assault charge and received a sentence of 25 years to life for murder. Ritzer appealed the case, and in 2021, the court confirmed that the appeal is moving forward in the process. At the time, his lawyers were planning to have experts analyze his brain and mental health history. He's also reportedly involved in another case from 2014, involving the attempted murder of a youth services worker. 1. Lauren Russell. In early 2022, footage of a 42-year-old high school physics teacher smoking out of a bong went viral. The video showed Lauren Russell from Sydney, Australia, sitting on a milk crate while taking a hit from a homemade device that was fashioned from a Gatorade bottle. She appeared to be surrounded by students, and the video sparked widespread outrage among parents. Authorities charged Russell with supplying a prohibited drug, alleging that she gave marijuana to students after school on at least one occasion. The disgraced former educator, who's originally from Maryland in the US, was immediately removed from her teaching position following her arrest. She was also banned from entering school grounds or having any contact with students. Court documents revealed that Russell had texted a student and asked if they wanted to meet up for a smoke. She also apparently picked up 2 teenagers and drove them out to the wilderness, where the trio got stoned together. Russell's lawyers argued that she was innocent due to her bipolar disorder, which he claimed was improperly medicated at the time. Without proper treatment, he said that Russell became symptomatic and acted out of character. The judge refused to drop the case, but offered some leniency due to Russell's circumstances and ordered her to abstain from all drugs and alcohol. She'll also receive mental health treatment for 2 years.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather get kicked out of school for being falsely accused of stealing from another student, or have your car stolen and never found? Let us know in the comments, and remember to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.